All right, so in this video, we'll hear a little bit about the day-to-day life of a professor. So I'm curious, Zarin, what does a typical day look like for you?
It's kind of hard to answer that question. There are like several categories of typical day, right? So um, during the semester, for example, it's quite busy. Like a typical day. Do you want me to include my personal life in this?
Yeah, sure,
So
go.
so I have two small kids. So a typical day is often, waking up, wrangling them, getting them to daycare, and then answering. I don't know. It honestly feels like answering about 200 emails that have come in the day before. So I work in Uganda, and so many of the emails that are coming in are like they've been up for 8 hours already, and so there's a lot of emailing to do. So I try to set time aside every morning to get some emails written. Um, I teach two classes a semester, so there's often just kind of, I'll maybe have to give a lecture or teach a class, um, and a lot of meetings. So a lot of like kind of administrative meetings with either faculty meetings or committee meetings. I usually have at least one of those every day, so that's, a good chunk of time. I am pretty also like booked most of the day with student meetings. So either of I have 30 plus undergraduate advisees where I'm their academic advisor. So I try to meet with all of them 3 times a semester. But I mean, that is, a lot of time. It's 90 hours of the semester is spent doing that. And then I, have meetings with my postdoc or graduate students or my lab group. So a lot of meetings. And then that actually is probably most of my 9 to 5 day. Get the kids, feed them, play with them, like actually try to spend time with them, put them to bed, try to spend like an hour of time with my husband. He goes to bed much earlier than I do. And then I continue working. So most weekdays, I probably spend from at least 8 p.m. to 12, 1, 2, 3, 4 working. That's often like at nighttime when I actually prep my lectures for the next day. It's when I do my grading. It's when that's the only time I get a chance to like work on data. If I actually want to like analyze data, that's usually then. Um, and but I do have a chunk of time every week. I try to have like a 4 hour chunk of time every week that I do not schedule any meetings, and it's just in my calendar as writing. And that's also when I try to do like a little bit of writing or a little bit of data work. Um, so that's like the semester. So I mean, it feels like I work. I don't know how many hours I actually work. It feels like I work 60-hour to plus work weeks. So I don't sleep very much. I don't have tenure, so I do kind of feel like that this is like the time I really, really have to push. But I will say when my kids are home and awake, I do not work. And I really try not to even have my phone around me. So I do have like chunks of personal time that I really try to carve out for myself. During the summer, when there aren't classes, I don't teach summer school, and I kind of make a point not to. I try to spend a little bit of time in the field every summer. So those days are wonderful and amazing and tiring in their own way. And then when I'm home in the summer, that's often the time when I actually can really devote time to like writing grants, like writing papers, doing data analysis. So I try to get a lot of that done when I'm not in teaching mode. And then that's when I sleep and take vacation. And I know it sounds so, everyone tells me that's a terrible pattern to keep for sleep. Like you can't just sleep in the summer. But that is kind of what I feel I have to do right at this point. So
Yeah.
good and bad.
Well, I hear that you've almost crafted a system to be able to balance the different types of work you've got, making sure you're present with your kids, making sure you get some time for sleep, even if it's only in the summer, right?
There's some time for sleep. And I don't work on weekends. I really really try not to work on weekends. The exceptions are like you have a grant deadline, and then it's just, you just have to. But a typical weekend, I don't work Friday nights. I don't work Saturday. I don't work Sunday during the day, but Sunday at night, I might prep a lecture for Monday. But like, I think that is like absolutely non-negotiable for me. But I know a lot of my colleagues do work on weekends, so I just have made that choice for my life. And my philosophy about this is, if I have to work that hard and work every weekend to get tenure, then academia is broken, and that's not my problem. And I'll just go do something else, because it's not like my kids are going to be young once in their life. Like, I'm not going to get that time back. So it's just a non-negotiable for me.
Yeah. Well, and it really sounds like crafting this sort of work environment that allows you to get that stuff done, but also have some minimum standards of like, this is my family time and I'm protecting that.
And I mean, I just don't want to, if I don't get tenure because I didn't work 80-hour weeks, then this is not the field for me.
Yeah, it's wild. Well, so it sounds like tenure weighs pretty heavily in your mind, right? Is that what success looks like at this stage, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. Yeah, I mean, I think yes, it probably does. I mean, I think until that point, that is just this like incredibly stressful thing that's always looming over you as a junior faculty. It colors so many decisions, and do I work on this or this? Do I write this grant or do I not write this grant? And it just feels, and I think it's very internalized. Like, I've talked to deans and I've talked to other people, and they're like, you're fine. What? Don't stress about it. Like, they'll say things like, well, I'm not staying awake late at night worried about your case. And I'm like, well, really? Because I am. And I don't think that there's any way around that. I think as soon as your tenure clock starts, that's what you are thinking about. And I wish it wasn't the case. I wish it were. And, it's to me, it's a fairly archaic old process. And there's so much kind of tradition involved in it, and it's not transparent. And the lack of transparency means that you don't really know, right? You don't know if it's good enough. And you don't know why other people did or did not get tenure. So you have nothing to say oh, okay, I am doing okay. Or, I wish it was less stressful. And I think they try to make it less stressful, but it's so opaque that that lack of transparency is it just drives all of my stress.
Yeah, well, and it's remarkable now, having worked in the corporate world. In the corporate world, you have documented performance expectations, and you talk about them every 6 months so that you can course correct, where tenure is so much more ambiguous and less defined, less reviewed.
And you do have reviews. You have a review after your second year and your fourth year, and they tell you kind of what the things you should work on are. But at the end of the day, you'll never know why you didn't get tenure. So you don't know if that's really because you didn't actually do the things that they told you to do, or maybe they found something else that they didn't like, or maybe they just didn't like you. That's what it feels like, right? That you could do everything right and check all the boxes, and they just might not like you.
Yeah.
And
that sounds stressful.
Yeah, it is very stressful. It's very hard to not internalize that personally and make it I'm not good enough. Which is why in my head I have to say, honestly, if I don't get tenure after how much I've worked, this is their problem. That's not my problem.
Yeah. Well, and really saying look at what I've produced, look at what I've done. If something doesn't work there, that's your system, right?
Yeah. I mean, if this is not good enough, I don't know what it if this is not good enough, I couldn't possibly have worked harder and maintained the things that are important to me. And I've probably told you this already, Tori, but when I think about reflecting on when I'm 65 or 70 and I reflect back on my career, I am never going to be the person. I'm never going to be the academic who sits there and thinks, oh, wow, I wish I'd written that one paper. I'm going to probably look back and say, I wish I'd spent more time with my kids and my friends. And, And I say that I love what I do. Like I love studying chimpanzees. I think I have the best job in the world. So it's not because I have a lack of passion for what I do. It's because I want to be very realistic about the things that really should matter to, like, that really do matter to me. And like my friends and my family are the things that matter the most. Um so I just, I'm trying to keep like very like realist, like kind of still open. Like honestly, there's a chance I won't get tenure, and I think I just will kind of be open minded. I'll probably call you and be like, "What do I do now, Tori?
Where do we go?
What kind of job should I look for now?" But I think maintaining that like open mindedness even through this part of my career is important.
Yeah. Well, and I hear a lot of like wisdom and principles in there, right? Of knowing what matters to you, knowing the degrees of freedom you have,
Mhm.
and then just letting the rest of it be out there as much as is possible, right? It does sound stressful.
Yeah, it's stressful. I kind of think it would be funny, like you've studied hormones before. Like I think they should do a study of pre-tenure, post-tenure on like academics and see what happens for
It
stress
really
level.
is. It's remarkable the amount that just most assistant professors must be operating under that level of stress. And I'm curious, that sounds like one of the challenges. What are the other challenges in being a professor at that stage?
I think it's really just balancing everything. I mean, it's a lot. Like if I think about all of the different categories of responsibility you have, like I have, so there's teaching, right? And being a good teacher and like really caring about like not just the content, but how you're teaching. Are you teaching fairly? Are you teaching like a diverse group of students who, and giving students who haven't had historically opportunities, are you providing opportunities for them? I think about like my responsibility as an advisor, because so many of my students come to me and ask for like help with pre-medical advising, as you know. um and in so many ways you really feel like you have a lot of their future in your hand, right? I mean, you're writing letters for med school, and like that's a pretty big responsibility. um I have my field site, and so we have not only the chimps to keep in mind, but like a long-term permanent staff of Ugandans that we employ and whose livelihood depends completely on our ability to get grant money. I have my lab, my postdoc, like my research team. Um, and then like my family, like, I mean, it's an enormous amount to juggle at one time. And I think that's a big challenge to just like, how do you balance, like, how do you find balance between all of those things? Um, I think the other challenges, wow, there are a lot of challenges. I don't know. I guess those are probably the two main things. And you know what? I actually will also say I think academia is very competitive, right? Because you are often like even not fighting, but like going up like with grants against your friends and call, right? Like that's a bit of a challenge. Um, and I think just actually it should not be a challenge to be a nice person in academia, but you do run up against a lot of people who are not nice. And, it just should not be hard to be nice. But running up against some personalities is like, it's really challenging.
Well, and one of the other observations I have, having operated in academics and then in corporate spaces, in corporate space, there's so much more feedback on soft skills and things like
Mm,
HR departments for the extreme cases. And academics sort of operates independently for that. And so there are a lot more opportunity for fringe personalities, should we say.
yeah, I think that's a very polite way of putting that.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, so those are challenges. What are your favorite parts of your job?
I love working with young people. I mean, I still feel very young. So when I say that, I mean, my students who are in their late teens and early 20s, I love teaching. I love like working with them. I love having them as advisees and in my lab. I think single-handedly, like the reason I feel young and maybe even look younger than I am, hopefully, is that I get to work with young people. And so that not only like rejuvenates me and my love of what I do, but I mean, look, I am all up to date on all the TikTok trends and like all the things. Like my husband's always like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "Well, it's the latest." But I love the energy of young people. Like I love the energy that they bring, and it makes me a better researcher, and it makes my energy level stay really high. So that's a real bonus for me. Um, and I love being able to mentor people. Like I love that aspect of academia that like, for me, like I got like I have these two mentors as an undergrad that like changed my life and for the better. And I have had continuously really wonderful mentors. And I think I mean, you hear horror stories about terrible mentors, and I think, but I think academia really has this opportunity. Like you really can find like a really wonderful mentorship system in there. So I love that. I love the chimps. I love studying the chimps. I mean, I think I cannot like I remember talking to other people about it, like who are not in academia. And so it's really funny when you talk to non-academics. And I remember one person was just like, after I talked to them, they looked at me and they were like, "Gosh, you really love chimps, don't you?" And I was like, I really do. I love everything about them. And they're horrible to each other. And I love it. And I find it so interesting. I love that I will literally never run out of questions to ask about them. I love the combination of like with our field, like my field, I love the combination of like big picture thinking, like grandiose thinking about like human evolution and who we are as a species, with the combination of like this nitty gritty like data analysis. Like, I love that we have data tables in our database that are 4 million rows, and I can like just like do this like cool. I love getting my hands and fingers in that data. And so it challenges so many things in my brain. And I think is amazing. And I will say, from a practical point of view, I love the schedule. I love that literally no one is going to tell me on a Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock that I have to be at work with a punch card. Like that I can make my own schedule. Turns out I make my schedule to be like a 60-hour work week, but hopefully not for long. But I love that, like, if I need to take a Tuesday off to recharge or just to do something else or to take my kids somewhere, like I can do that, and that there's no one saying no. I love the travel. I love that I get to go to Uganda, but also to all sorts of places and like see primates everywhere. Like I love that aspect totally. So lots of really wonderful things too.
Yeah, well, and it just sounds like you're so fully aware of the pros and cons that, right? You know this world so well. You realize what you're saying yes to and what you're having to give up because of that. It's just,
Yeah. I mean, I end up saying yes to way too many things, though, right? That's like the problem.
like, well, let's just put in a little more.
Yeah.
Well, and so in our next video, I'll get your advice for like folks contemplating this path and sort of guidance you would have for folks thinking about it. How's that sound?
That sounds great.